Using different colors, the color blending can create a whole different shape. So for this section, I've drawn a watermelon onto the fabric just using a pencil. So we're going to start off by doing an outline. Just choose any color that you like, and we're going to use the backstitch technique to just go along the edge of the outline of our watermelon. When you're doing backstitches around a curved line, you want to make them slightly smaller so that they can be more accurate. So next I'm going to do a satin stitch inside the rind of the watermelon. I'm going to choose off green. For this satin stitch, instead of wrapping around like this, I'm going to come out and next to each other just to save on thread and that there aren't too many layers, because it becomes more difficult the more layers that you have. So now we're going to get into color blending. This is my favorite part of the process, and it's a lot easier than it looks. Just know that this takes a little bit of time, but the more you work into it, the more beautiful and the more kind of seamless and refined your work is going to be. So firstly, we're choosing our colors along kind of like a tonal spectrum. So I'm going to choose a dark pink for the darkest tone, an orange for the mid-tone, and a kind of dark yellow, light orange for the highlights. So first, let's map out the section. We're going to have our light tone at the top, our mid-tone in the middle, and our dark tone at the bottom. And we're going to firstly take our light tone and start with a short and long stitch and fill up your area. What I like to do is kind of use this line as a guideline between working above and below for the short and long stitch, and always kind of coming back to the center part. What's really important with embroidery is to consider direction. So for me, the direction of this watermelon is going to be from the point at the top and then work its way out. So we're almost going to fan out the stitches from the center point. Next, we're going to work with our mid-tones. So again, we're just going to be doing this just above and below the mid-tone line and meeting up with your previous stitches. This part is really fun. This is kind of freestyle embroidery, and you can just keep going in any place you feel that the threads need to be. As you can see, a gradient is starting to form by virtue of your color choices. At this point, it's looking nice, but it's almost a bit chunky and naive. So let's put in our last dark tones. So now we want to start refining this section. I'm going to take my mid-tone, our stranded threads, take our arm's length, and then we're going to divide it. So the stranded threads come predominantly in 6s, as you can see when I split them here. So I'm dividing this now into 3. And I'm going to start working in between our mid-tones and our light tones, and our mid-tones and our dark tones. This is going to tighten up the whole embroidery and create a much more seamless gradient. There's also lots of gaps here that you can work in, and you'll see that then it starts to become a little bit more difficult to discern which is which stitch, and becomes a lot more interesting. So here, I'm just working up into the light and dark, down into the dark, as I see necessary. Already we've just started, and as you can see, this side we've got the refined threads and that side doesn't have them. So now I'm going to take my light tone, and I think for this I'm going to use a 2. It's okay to work your colors all the way down or keeping those stitches short and long. So I'm going to work this very thin 2 in my light tone all the way almost to the pink, just to create a lot more of a seamless gradient. The more you work, the less you'll notice, but the more effective the whole piece will become. So I'm going to take a pink. So I think I'm going to use a 3 here. So here I'm working in my dark tones, but up and down into my mid, filling in gaps. So as you can see, this light pink has toned down this dark pink a lot and has created quite a seamless gradient between the light orange, the mid-tone orange, your pink, and your dark pink. It's a lot more refined, and you can barely see the difference between the colors at first from a distance, but when you look into it, there's a lot of detail in there now. So we're going to finish this off with two very simple things. We want to give our watermelons some pips. If you're worried about where you're putting them and you don't want to freestyle it, you're more than welcome to use your air erasable pen to put the dots down, because those will disappear even on the threads. Put in your little French knot. As you layer the threads, it will become a little bit harder to work with. This is why it's important to be mindful of where you've put your knots. So our last little thing is we're going to create that little divide that a watermelon has between the flesh and the rind. And this is where we're going to use our couching to create that slight curved line. So I'm going to go from there, from the beginning to the end, leaving a little bit of slack, and then couch it down along the area where you want it. So here you have a watermelon that has been color blended with French knot pips, a couched section between the flesh and the rind, a satin stitch rind, and a backstitch outline. As you can see, with just a few basics, you can create something really special and with a lot of dimension.
My name is Peggy Dean. I'm an artist and educator, and we're going to be embroidering on photographs. You can see it just adds a lot of really fun interest with pops of color, just with some very simple stitches. I'm going to show you my favorite stitch, which is called the French knot. You're going to come up through the back, and then what you're going to do is you're going to take the thread and you're going to wrap it around the needle like this once and twice, and then you're going to hold this tight and go back through the same hole while you hold this down, and then you're just gonna pull that through like so. Before I do my French knots, I want to make sure that I punch my holes first. So I'm gonna do that about like half of the stitch size that I initially did, or length. And that's where my French knots are gonna go. They're gonna be pretty thick. Okay. So now, this is my favorite. I don't know what it is about this one, but I just get such joy out of doing French knots. So I'm just gonna go around twice, just like it should be. Hold that tight, go back in, hold this tight right here, whoops. Back in there. And then hold it tight while I pull this through. This might be a little challenging. There we go. Hold that, hold it. And there's my French knot, okay? I'm gonna do that again. The next one. Really thick thread. This wouldn't be the ideal situation if this wasn't a postcard, but it is. Okay, so then I'm gonna go through, hold this nice and tight with my thumb, like this, and bring that back down. So finally from here, I want to add little bursts coming off of each of these. So similar to the running stitch here, but I'm gonna do it, it's not even a running stitch, it's basically just like a regular boring stitch. So I'm gonna use 2 strands on this one, which will turn into 4 strands when I double it up. And I am going to stitch it so that it just adds even more of that like bursting off, if you will. Keep in mind, you wanna punch those holes first. So see how I did it on the outside here? I'm gonna wanna make it so that I have this curve. So I'm gonna come down here, but instead of just like finding a curve and going, I'm also wanting to make sure that this is lining up. I'm going to go up to the top, and then rather than coming through the bottom again, I'm actually just going to go into this second hole and then have that meet the bottom like this, and then I'll go through that last hole and have it meet the bottom. So that is what that's gonna look like. Okay, so that is finishing that off, and that is my mark making for this. I decided that I am going to add tiny French knots to the bottom of each of these bursts, and then I'm also going to add a little bit of flare in each like little divot. I'm gonna wanna punch holes in each one of those areas that I'm going to be threading through. So now I can just start doing that. So I'm actually gonna do tiny French knots right here. I'm not gonna do the double loop. I'm actually just gonna go around once because I want these to be really small. I'm gonna hold it tight and pull that through. So see, that's just like enhancing it just enough to where it's adding some more interest. Rather than framing it, I'm actually integrating the color in to interact with the image. I'm not gonna punch additional holes this time because I'm just gonna actually go through the hole that already exists in each of these little bursts, if you will. And I'm gonna loop around twice and then go back through the same hole, hold that tight. There we go. Yeah, so that's just adding a little pop of color and makes it look a little more finished. So as you can see, just those little minimal add-ons can really add a lot of interest to a simple image.
This is really the basics of embroidery for me. I love to layer, love to add stuff, like to make contrast, and you can basically make any plant you want like this. So you have your hoop with your fabric. And for this, I'm using a friction pen. This is a very handy tool because you can draw with it. It's just like a normal pen. I'm going to start off with using greens on the upper right side, just like the reference picture. So this color we're going to use a lot in this project, and it is the base of the leaf. Starting from the back, and I'm just going to make a long and short stitches. And here at the top you can see that there is a curve, and when you see that a curve is coming, make the stitches small so you can really make that nice curve with your stitching. And you can make those stitches pretty long. If you're not heading into a curve, then you can make them pretty long because the leaf itself is not that big. And we are going to continue with this color. So right under that first hole, we are going to fill this in with the dark green. Now let's head back to our reference picture, and you can see that underneath that dark green, there is some light green going on. And that's what I also want to do. And again, also for this part, I'm using 2 strands. Now I want to go in with white and fill that whole section on the right with white. What we're going to do on the left side is we're going to take our dark thread, our dark green, and just how we did it on the right side, just filling it in with long and short stitches, we're going to do that for the entire left side. And here it is all done. And now I'm using the same color we used before, the lighter green. Making long and short stitches going from the margin to the midrib of the leaf, just to create more base and to see where we're at if I add that. Because with the Monstera you do have those color difference in the leaf, like the inside and the outside always have more contrast. And we're going to continue doing this on the inside and also of the outside of the left leaf. And when we look at the variegated left upper side, there is spotty, white spottiness going on, and I do want to recreate that. This is not something that is you have to place it there, you have to put it there. No, this is really a feeling that you have to create. Like, okay, where does it look good? How do I want it to look? So just place some stitches wherever you think it will look good. I do feel that the green, the light green and the dark green is very blocky. It doesn't come off natural like a leaf because it's such a straight line. So I'm gonna take the lighter green and I'm gonna make some small stitches long and short We are going to continue doing this towards the margin of the leaf and also the midrib of the left leaf, just so it blends more in with the lighter green. And we have ourselves an affordable, variegated Monstera.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.